Hello, my name is Charles, and today I would like to share some wonderful insight or at least an interesting idea. Hopefully, you guys find it interesting for why I think behavior is super important in well being, but also in like mental health and how to solve, or just in mental health. And, because often in the West, behavior is overlooked, right? We're like, oh, well, we could pop a pill, we could do this, we could do therapy. And it's like, why is behavior so important? And so I'd like to illustrate this with kind of two examples. Why is behavior so important in terms of like solving mental health or at least just improving your overall well-being? And so first, let's give two examples. Let's imagine first we're going to use the body, right? We're going to use the body, and then we're going to use the brain. So let's imagine, right? Let's imagine in the first example, this is number one, and this is number two, body and brain. So let's imagine in the first example, you have a health complication. You have maybe like I don't know, you're having stomach pains, you're like whatever your health complication with the body may be. An example is slipping my imagination at the moment. But let's say, right, you have a health complication in the body and you're like, man, or let's say your breathing is like all messed up, right? You have like sleep apnea and you're like, man, my breathing is so messed up and it is affecting my sleep. Now, you can, get a CPAP machine, you can do all this and take all these external remedies, right? Essentially, right, you can address, let's say, right, the tree, right? You have a tree here, this beautiful, beautiful tree. And this tree represents, the leaves of the tree. This is the tree problem. And let's say the leaves represent, the symptoms. Oh my gosh, I'm experiencing breathing problems. I'm experiencing this, and I can't sleep properly. So I have sleep apnea. Now you can use the CPAP, you can take medication, you can do all this stuff. And that is addressing the symptoms. You are cutting, let's say we use red, you are cutting the leaves off. Now, what's going to happen if you don't, essentially attack it at its roots? Well, just like any tree, the symptoms just pop up again. Right? The tree is going to produce more leaves. And in the same way, like whatever, in this example, the sleep apnea, you're just going to experience problems in other ways. So, the root cause may be like, oh, I need to do more cardio, or I need to walk more. Like there are behavior interventions that go to the root of the problem. Like if I change, if I actually improve my cardiovascular health, then irrespective of if I have the sleep apnea machine or the CPAP machine, or I have, the medication on hand or this, that, and the other, the behavior has functionally solved, the issue, right? In that current condition, with or without the external, essentially shears that cut the symptoms or the leaves that are symptoms, the issue is solved. So that's one example just with the body, right? And let's say now with the brain, you're like, let's say you have the brain and you're like, man, I feel the blues. And I feel tired. Let's just not even the blues, because everyone feels the blues from here and then. Let's say you just feel tired all the time. You have low energy. And you're like, man, I have low energy, bro. I just have low energy. And you're like, man, I think it's like this, or I think it's this, depression, or this, that, and the other. And you think it's something fundamental, like somehow I am depression, or I am, like you've identified with it, and it is somehow part of you, as if it's part of your personality. You know what I mean? To be depressed. Like like you were, made to be depressed, you know. And so that's where we're like, okay, well, in this case, right, with something with the depression, right, there, and this is not to, downplay. If anyone is experiencing depression, they're like, right, there's probably a very small subsection, but there might be some subsection where there's some neurochemical imbalance based on genetic or hereditary things. And, the depression requires like medication or, supplementation that allows for proper, neurochemistry. Okay, fair, right? But let's say you're like 98% of the population and your depression is not like inherent to you. Well, then, in this case, right, let's go back to the little drawing, and the depression is not inherent to you, right? You are not depression, you are experiencing depression. So if we come from that lens, right, you're like, oh, depression, and like you have that low energy, right? Well, it could mean it's not necessarily that the depression is like a problem. It's more like it's a sign. Like the way we use behavior is, oh, I'm experiencing depression. What is this emotional or neurochemical or experience like indicating to me? You know what I mean? And so then you're like, all right, well, what behaviors can I do, right, to maybe improve this? Because you could think like, oh, I am depressed and therefore I need SSRIs, or I need that, like as if you have to have it, right? Or I mean, as if it's like fundamental, it's part of who you are. Or, it could also be, right? Let's suppose you're experiencing depression. Then it could also be you need sunlight. It's like, what if there's just lacking vitamin D? And so the behavior is, going outside. Maybe you need to go in the sun, going outside. Maybe you just need the sun. And the sun would give you that vitamin D and you'd be like, wow, I'm experiencing less depression. Like, oh my gosh. Like they're, in certain areas or regions of the world, right, they get seasonal affective disorder. And that's, they don't have the vitamin D, so they experience depression. Well, once they have the vitamin D, it goes away. And what does that indicate? That the depression was not some like fixed, like they are depression, right? They're experiencing depression, and right, it's not fundamental to who they are. And then it goes away once the proper remedy or attribute or whatever you want to call it, vitamin D is added to their system. And so that's where behavior helps out. Right. Second is let's say you're depressed, right? And you're like, man, I am depressed. Right? And instead of like, identifying, you could be like, it could be, let's say, you think it could also be like you need a social interaction, or you need, I don't know, you like social interaction or exercise, or it could be, could be that you have some unprocessed emotional experience. Maybe the depression is telling you, like, I'm burnt out, man. There's too much on my plate. Maybe I need rest, maybe you need rest in this case, right? And so, essentially, I'm not saying I'm an expert or some, like, guru or, psychiatrist who knows all there is to know about the brain and body and can solve everything, right? I'm just saying the behavior interventions, right? The reason behavior is so important and I think is overlooked in Western society in terms of both medicine and also well-being, right? Under the presumption that like I'm sick, I need a pill. And instead of like, oh, what behavior intervention can I do? How can I change what I'm doing, saying, eating, how I'm sleeping, et cetera, is because we identify with the experience instead of being like, oh, this experience. So like, here's what I mean. So I'll write it out because there's just a semantical like thing I think happens in Western society in our thinking that may super help people in terms of like for why behavior intervention might be so helpful in their life. So let's say, right, it's you are experiencing depression. You are not depression itself, right? Now, I know this seems like, well, this is super simple. Obviously, you're experiencing depression, but it's like, it means the depression, what this means, AKA what this means is you are not fundamentally depressed, or, whatever the, experience that is negative or issue, right? It's not that it is fundamental, like inherent, like maybe for some small subsection, there's like neurochemical imbalances, but all in all, on the average, you are not fundamentally depressed. You are experiencing depression. So that's what, you're not meaning, which means, right? Which means, essentially, the depression is an indicator of, is an indicator of behavioral, or, is an indicator or message from your system to change or accept something. So, right, it's not, so here's what I'm essentially, right, let me grab this. Okay, right? So what this would mean, right, is let's say you're experiencing that depression, right? Boom, depression cloud, or whoops. Yeah, let me go back to the brush. Okay, boom, and depression cloud. This is the storm cloud of depression. And you're like, like you are experiencing depression. You're experiencing this storm cloud, right? This is what you're experiencing. You aren't the storm cloud. And what that means is there is a what? A solution. So it's like you can either accept, what's going on in your life. The depression, like, I'm not going to say what depression or any emotion or, I guess, state of mind means in your experience. Like, I don't know what it necessarily means for you. All right. And I don't even know the full neurochemistry of depression, to be quite frank. But I do know that you can, like, that depression can be viewed as an indicator or a message from your system to be like, okay, maybe I just need vitamin D, or maybe I need more sunlight, or maybe I need to accept that this is part of, this is in my life, or this is the phase I'm in, right? It doesn't mean like, oh, the depression is there forever and I am depression. It means like, okay, the depression is telling you something that you could either change or accept or think about in your life. And so that's why behavior intervention, I think, is so important. And it is unfortunate that it is overlooked in Western society, because it causes us to think we are the condition or we are the experience, like it's fundamental to us, when most of the time, not saying with all, conditions or experiences or, any unfortunate or like malady in the human experience, because obviously those are difficult and hard to deal with, right? This is not to trivialize people's suffering and what they go through on a day-to-day basis. This is just to say that behavior intervention can be a very, very helpful alternative, and I think we overlook it because we identify with with conditions, as opposed to them being experiences or indicators that we can either change or accept something in our lives. And so I hope this was an empowering message. I hope this gives you a feeling like, oh, okay, I'm not my, depression. I'm not my this. I'm not my ADHD. I'm not my, whatever you're experiencing. I'm not my suffering. I am experiencing the suffering. And so what can I do about it, or what can I accept to make my life better? It's ultimately in the pursuit of well-being and you guys being happy and, enjoying your experiences of life. So hopefully this helped. I just wanted to share like a wonderful, or what I thought to be a wonderful video. And I hope you guys got some, benefit out of it. Thank you so much for listening.